Hello, dear listeners. Our book is Orlando, a biography by Virginia Woolf, presented by Julian Gutierrez, Jhovany Devia, Sebastian Chavez, Daniela Prado, and Cristian Pulido. Something about the author. Virginia Woolf's original name in full Adeline Virginia Stephen. She was born on January 25 in 1882 in London, England. After a lifelong struggle with her mental health, including periods of severe depression and suicide attempts, Woolf died in 1941 by drowning herself near her house in Sussex, England, at the age of 59. She is best known for her novels, especially Mr. Dalloway (1925) and To the Lighthouse (1927). Woolf also wrote pioneering essays on artistic theory, literary history, women's writing, and the politics of power. A fine stylistic, she experimented with several forms of biographical writing, composed painterly short fictions, and sent to her friends and family a lifetime of brilliant letters. Woolf is determined as biographical, historical, and personal dilemmas with the story of Orlando, who lives from Elizabethan times through the entire 18th century. He then becomes female, experiences debilitating gender constraints, and lives into the 20th century. Orlando begins writing poetry during the Renaissance, using history and mythology as models, and over the next centuries returns to the poem The Oak Tree, revising it according to shifting poetic conventions. In the same way, Woolf herself writes in more heroic imitation of biographical styles that change over the same period of time. Although many of her essays began as reviews written anonymously to deadlines for money, and many include imaginative settings and whimsical speculations. They are serious inquiries into reading and writing, the novel and the arts, perception and essence, war and peace, class and politics, privilege and discrimination, and the need to reform society.
Woolf's haunting language, her prescient insights into wide-ranging historical, political, feminist, and artist issues, and her revisionist experiments with the novelistic form during a remarkably productive career charted the course on the modernist and postmodernist letters. Even though Woolf wrote plenty of the novels in size and short stories, these are some of the most important novels: The Voyage Out (1915), Night and Day (1919), To the Lighthouse (1927), Orlando (1928), The Years (1937), among others. With regard to the short stories, she wrote Kew Gardens (1919), Monday or Tuesday (1921), The New Dress (1924), and some others. Regarding awards and achievements, her work To the Lighthouse was ranked number 15 by the Modern Library in 1998 on its list of the 100 best English-language novels of the 20th century. The Time magazine also chose it as one of the best English-language novels published between the 1923 and 2005. Finally, Virginia Woolf is known for her contribution to 20th century literature and her essays, as well as the influence she has had on the literary, particularly feminist criticism.
Let's talk about a short summary about the story. Orlando is a novel by Virginia Woolf, published in 1828. The story initiates with a 16-year-old Orlando, a young boy, hitting at the dismembered head of a Moor hanging from the rafters. The head had been brought back from the battle by Orlando's father, and Orlando dreams of one day joining him in war. He had begun a lengthy poem called The Oak Tree, but he does not finish it. Orlando is exceptionally beautiful and catches the eye of Queen Elizabeth I, who brings him into her service as part of the court. The elderly queen is quite jealous. However, when she catches Orlando kissing a young woman, he is banished from court and returns home. When the old queen dies, her cousin James becomes king and invites Orlando back to court. The country is affected by what is known historically as the Great Frost. It is a terrible cold snap that freezes everything solid. James sees a chance to increase his popularity and creates a surprising carnival on the frozen river. There, Orlando skates with Sasha, a beautiful young girl from Russia. They fall deeply in love, but Orlando's moodiness makes Sasha be worried, and there is great resistance to the relationship. When Orlando's mood becomes too difficult to withstand for Sasha, for that reason, she is unfaithful to Orlando, then she runs away to Russia, leaving Orlando heartbroken, although he accomplishes to forgive her. Under these circumstances, Orlando returns home and sleeps for an entire week. He wakes up with no memory of Sasha. He goes on his poem again and starts working on it strongly. His renewed interest in reading and writing leads him to seek an audience with the famous poet named Nick Green. Orlando shows Green some of his composition, and Green uses it to perform a satire about Orlando, incorporating some of Orlando's poem. Orlando insults all men as a result, and determines he will write about whatever he wants. He's so successful that people begin traveling from far away to see his house. In that sense, Orlando becomes famous and is welcomed into high society, where he meets and falls in love with an Archduchess, Harriet, and he requests the king to make him ambassador to Turkey.
Once as ambassador, Orlando travels to Constantinople. He is very popular there, but focuses on his work. The king is impressed and awards Orlando a noble title. After the party celebrating this event, Orlando sleeps again for 7 days. During this time, there is a revolution, and men come in Orlando's room to murder him. However, he is sleeping so deeply and they assume he is already dead. When he wakes up, he becomes a woman without any reason. She initially tries to make a living as a gypsy, but she decides to return to England. Later, on the ship heading home, Orlando struggles with her new gender. She begins to see how it grants her power over men. That is why the captain of the ship offers her to live with him. This relationship makes Orlando feel comfortable with her new gender, and she goes back to England, where she meets the Archduchess Harriet again, and she discovers that the Archduchess is in fact the Archduke Harry. The Archduke wishes to marry Orlando, but Orlando has no feelings for him. Orlando interacts into society and begins affairs with many different men. Orlando does not get older and lives to see the reign of Queen Victoria. She does not like the way the world changes as time passes by. She feels that society judges her for not being married and having children. Afterwards, she meets a sailor named Shelberdin, and they are too in love with each other, whereby they decide to marry. Nonetheless, Shelberdin tells Orlando that he used to be a woman as well. Finally, time after Orlando thinks that she has seen her first old lover called Sasha, and she's frightened by thoughts of the life she once lived. At the end, Orlando publishes The Oak Tree, being well received and winning a prize.
Stylistic characteristics. Metaphors highlight descriptive, realistic, or fantastic. Firstly, Virginia Woolf is not the easiest author to comprehend. Orlando is heavy on imagery, and she often utilizes a stream of consciousness to bury the reader in a flood of thoughts and emotions, which can be hard to deal with. But her works, especially Orlando, are beautiful and classic works, many of which host queer characters and many of which face with gender roles and mental illness. Correspondingly, Orlando is a novel of fictional genre, whose narrator is in third person, omniscient, and unreliable biographer who changes style and tone to fit the changes of Orlando's life. By the same token, Woolf focuses on feminist and lesbian themes. In this word sense, from our outlook, she takes a grassroots approach to inform and inspire feminism. Also, in this book is explored the role of women in society and their rights. In like manner, some relevant themes are expressed in Orlando such as sex and gender. That is to say, the difference between men and women, behaviors contemplated at that time. Non-realistic facts like when Orlando finds herself in the present day, 1928, and she is forced to acknowledge her own nature as a multitude of selves and experiences within one person, and some fragments of poetry. On the other hand, Woolf altered the sense of normality throughout this history at the moment of making perceptible a controversial glance for clothing moving from men to women in an unexpected way. When Orlando exactly confronts her own otherness, her own acute sense of becoming other, using her body as an embodiment of a projection surface for gendered fantasies. That is why this book can be placed into the modern period, since it is implied the usage of body to convey ideas at some point. Equally, women were still struggling because of their rights. Similarly, there is present a shift in moral values when including some elements such as transition gender in addition to affairs between plenty of people.
How the topics of the gender roles, societal expectation and the time and exploring the novel. One of the ways in which gender roles is constructed in Orlando is a through clothing clothes, change or view of the world, and the world's view as declares the fictional biographer who narrates the book, and that is certainly the case for Orlando. When Orlando first sees Sasha, he is great loved on the 16th century, as ice skating during the Greek frost. Heroic fashion served to disguise the sex, and Orlando is convinced that Sasha is a man. But as Sasha skates closer, and Orlando can make out the shapes on the breasts on the masculine toned, he knows she is a woman.
In the manner Orlando is only curious about Sasha when he thinks she is a man, but when he finds out that she's a woman, he falls madly in love with her. This suggests that people's view of others, particularly on a romantic or sexual level, are deeply influenced by the social norms and how men and how women are expected to present themselves.
With respect to societal expectations, it is clear that while being a woman is obviously different for Orlando compared to living as a man, the book maintains that the sexes intermix. In every human being, a vacillation from one sex to the other takes place. The story argues, and often it is only the clothes that keep the male or female resemblance. Thus, the traditional notions of male and female are invented and imposed by society and do little more than confuse and obscure one's true gender identity.
Time is incredibly subjective in Orlando. The only way we can reliably tell the passage of time is based on changes in the monarchy, new inventions, and the biographer flat out telling us that time has passed. If we did not have these clues, we would be dependent on Orlando's sense of time, which sometimes places more importance on a single minute than a single decade. This reflects the way we actually experience time. An hour with a pretty girl may seem like a minute, while spending a minute with your hand on the stove may seem like an hour. Basically, she wanted to show the differences among several eras. However, the time concept in this novel is very prominent from the beginning for the reader.